Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Hello, America, and hello, nuclear aficionados around the world. Welcome to Nuclear.com Daily. I'm Steve Schulin of Nuclear.com, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be part of your day. This is Thursday, December 26th, 2013. Hope you all had a very Merry Christmas. Let's go to the front pages today. Top story for me is out of a paper out of the nation of India. The Financial Chronicle is the newspaper. They just had a small little teaser there on the front page to a page 8 story called "The Cost of Nuclear Power Proving High." And they describe it as the government is in a fix over how to cut cost of electricity generation by nuclear power plants. And the article is a Press Trust of India story discussing the vast inflation in new build projections for these joint venture nuclear plants. Much higher costs than the Kudankulam, the first unit at Kudankulam. Like the estimated cost by the Indian Department of Atomic Energy for the Jaitapur nuclear plant is around 9 rupees per unit. They say, I don't know if that's kilowatt hour or megawatt hour. So that's 9 rupees per unit. That compares to Kudankulam, cost per unit for unit 1 and 2 is around 3.5 to 4 rupees per unit. So the projections for this next site, Jaitapur, is about 2.5, 3 times the cost for Kudankulam. Anyway, elsewhere in the article, they give prices, similar inflation for another plant, the Mithi Virdhi, M-I-T-H-I is the first word, and then V-I-R-D-H-I, where the projected cost is 12 rupees per unit. Way interesting stuff. They say they have a quote from a senior Department of Atomic Energy official. If we take inflation into consideration, even then the cost is very high. We are also answerable to people. Plus, there is a lot of opposition to nuclear projects where we have foreign collaborators. If nothing works out, then we will perhaps have to back out because of the high electricity generation cost from the project. So, economics rearing its ugly head, not just in the United Kingdom, but in India. Other nuclear-related stories in the news, energy-wise. Actually, the main focus in the Charleston, West Virginia newspaper, the Gazette. That top story, Iraqi Christians attacked. 3 bombings by militants leave dozens dead on Christmas Day. Isn't that a sad commentary? Anyway, but their nuclear-related story is about natural gas and the government increasing its projections for the natural gas market share of electricity generation by 2040. Just a couple of years ago, a similar projection showed coal continuing to be the single largest source of electric power in the United States by 2040. That projection has now changed. They're projecting natural gas to come out on top. The newest projections from the U.S. Department of Energy, natural gas will produce about 35% of total U.S. electric power in 2040. Coming in next is coal at 32%. And I guess nuclear, it doesn't give the figure for nuclear, but I suspect it's close to the 19 or 20% range. They have a pull quote from the annual Energy Information Administration report. Projected low prices for natural gas make it a very attractive fuel for new generating capacity. In some areas, natural gas-fired generation replaces generation formerly supplied by coal and nuclear. And there was one other story in the papers today on the front pages about nuclear power here in the United States. And that was a story in the Orange County Register, the hometown paper for San Onofre, about the NRC's inspection report citing a violation for San Onofre related to the steam generator replacement project, not doing enough to assure that the replacement generators were not the lemons that they ended up with. That's my words, not the NRC's. We covered that yesterday in our special Christmas edition because there was a front page story in the San Diego Union Tribune about it yesterday. But today the Orange County Register covers it. Moving to Iran, which is the predominant nuclear focus of foreign stories, nuclear weapons stories. The Arab Times has a alarming looking headline here. Clear enrichment to 60%, urge hardline Iran members of parliament, is their headline above the fold. And they print a Reuters story. Iran's hardline lawmakers are seeking to increase uranium enrichment under the country's nuclear program to a level that can produce bomb-grade material, a state-run website said yesterday. The bill could bring Tehran into direct conflict with the major powers that reached an interim agreement with Iran in Geneva last month, requiring Tehran to suspend its enrichment of higher-grade uranium. However, Iran's most powerful authority, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has so far backed the interim agreement. The hardliners, irked by the foreign policy shift since moderate President Hassan Rouhani was elected in June, oppose the Geneva deal. The bill introduced on Wednesday, if approved, will oblige the government to enrich uranium to 60% level in order to provide fuel for ... What do they need 60% fuel to provide fuel for? I'll be looking at the rest of that story later to find out how it continues. Similar headlines, but not specifying the 60% enrichment, are in several papers. Let's see here. In Oregon, a McClatchy news story is their lead. Iran threatens nuclear speed up. Country balks at possible trade sanctions from U.S. Let's see. It might be the same story. Yes, it looks like it is. Slightly different headline in the Miami Herald on their front page. Iran lawmakers threaten Congress with a nuke speed up. Their subhead, the gesture is in apparent retaliation for the economic sanctions bill that would be activated if talks about Iran's nuclear program break down. And the Lewiston Tribune has it as their top story. Iran threatens to speed up nuclear program. And this is the same story as well. Parliament bill would require acceleration of uranium enrichment if Congress adds sanctions. Oh, so this too is a conditional conditional bill. The Iranian legislature took notice of the United States Senate proposed conditional new sanctions bill with their own conditional bill. Very much like a chess game going on. I hope our diplomatic chess masters are up on their game. A local related story on Iran comes out of the St. Cloud, Minnesota Times. Minnesota native reappears as policy player in Iran talks. White House aides secretly met with officials in the Middle East, and they're talking about Jake Sullivan, who works as a senior State Department official. He was deputy chief of staff for Hillary Clinton. And finally, there were a couple of stories. I'm not sure what I did with the other one. About China and the Arab nations. A lot more outreach. China's getting a lot more power in the Mideast as a result of the Iranian unpleasantness. Now, there was one more nuclear story. That AP story that we first covered earlier this week about nuclear missiles of force and distress is still showing up on front pages around the country. There was one today in the Santa Maria Times of California. Anyway, so that's the front page news. I was looking through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's Atoms releases this morning. Gosh, they've already got 500 documents released. One of them that caught my eye was a letter, a response to a letter. NRC Chairman McFarlane signed off on a letter to David Lochbaum of the Union of Concerned Scientists. Lochbaum, in October, had urged the NRC to hold more public meetings about the risks of spent fuel in spent fuel pools and whether or not the NRC should step up the transfer of fuel from pools to casks. And in his letter back in October, I really didn't know this about Union of Concerned Scientists. Lochbaum says here, I took a note on this, reducing the inventory of irradiated fuel in spent fuel pools to enhance their safety and security is the top priority of the Union of Concerned Scientists Nuclear Power Safety Project. I had no idea that was their top priority. I do know that some of their members, including perhaps the most highly regarded member out of MIT, has been doing an awful lot of work on spent fuel pool safety over the years, going back long before the world's attention on spent fuel pools was highlighted by the Fukushima wreckage. But I got to tell you, I have very, very mixed feelings about whether it's a net safety advantage to remove fuel from the pools and put them in casks, because I think that the casks are much more susceptible to terror attack. You know, I guess it's not that hard to point out which building the spent fuel pool is in to terrorists and have them target it. But it's not quite as simple as saying, look for the big the big bunch of casks standing upright in the nearby field and point your missile launcher towards them. I remember after 9/11, the first spent fuel pool cask meeting that I went to at NRC, I made a comment at the end of it saying that I thought that this demonstrated that spent fuel cask ispacies as currently designed and built were a net liability. And actually, I predicted that we would stop doing these the ispacies like we've been doing. I did like Holtec's idea of transferring spent fuel into casks suitable for being buried underground. I also like the ideas used by some to put high berms up so that these spent fuel casks are not in direct line of sight of anyone from outside the protected area. Anyway, I'd love to sit down with David Lochbaum and talk about this. Maybe we can get him on the show. I've had the pleasure to meet him at various NRC meetings over the years. We don't see eye to eye on everything. He's a nuclear engineer. I'm not. I respect his nuclear engineering knowledge. I do question his judgment. Sometimes I gave him a hard time when he published a document that had been retracted by NRC from public release after 9/11. And it showed locations of highly radioactive material. Anyway, I gave him down the country at a meeting, saying, why in the world would you want to make this stuff freely available? And he shrugged it off and said, well, we put it up on a site that would only allow 100 downloads or something like that. I shook my head and said, well, there's no limit on who any of those 100 could have been. I downloaded it to take a look at it. I'm sure anybody else following that matter with bad intent as opposed to my good intent would have had no trouble being one of the first 100 to download that file. Anyway, I'd like to talk with Dave about why in the world they would make it their top priority to urge more spent fuel casks be used to transfer spent fuel to. All right, thanks everybody. Hope you have a great rest of the day and rest of the week. And those of you in the nuclear biz, make it a safe one. This is Steve Schulin signing off for nuclear.com Daily.